Yo, what's up? It's Goffy here, and over the last couple of days I've been hiring a camera. The camera is digital, crop sensor, has a pretty cool viewfinder and a fixed lens. Any guesses? Well, here it is. So what is it? This is the Fujifilm X100V. I know I'm a little slow off the mark as this camera has been out a while. This camera has a very strong community of people that absolutely love it. And this is the most recent iteration that lots of people claim is near perfect. So as someone that loves Leica rangefinders, I thought, you know what, let's give this guy a go and see what all the love's about. There's a couple features that you notice almost straight away when you take it out the box. Now the first is this is a very well built camera. It's made out of aluminium and it is weather sealed as long as you put a filter on the lens. All of the controls on the top feel great to the touch. They're very tactile and very precise, and they give that really good sort of feedback. The first time you take a shot with the camera, you'll notice something really weird. It sounds like an old film camera and it's very quiet, and that's because this camera actually has a leaf shutter, something that I can't remember the last time I saw this in a modern camera that wasn't medium format. The lens on the front of this camera is a 23mm f2, which is a full frame equivalent of about 35mm. On the rear of the camera, there's very few buttons. If you're coming from a Leica like me, you'll be used to this. If you're coming from a modern mirrorless camera, it might feel a bit weird not to have things like a D-pad. One of the features that I was most looking forward to using is the hybrid viewfinder. To me, shooting with a rangefinder is one of the most enjoyable things about using a Leica, and Fuji have their own system, this hybrid viewfinder, that I was really excited to give a go. On the front of the camera, there's this small switch that might look oddly placed, but in use it's actually really easy and accessible over the top of the camera that changes the viewfinder between two different settings. One of them's optical and one of them's digital. From a digital point of view, it's exactly like you'd expect from any sort of normal mirrorless camera. It's nice, bright and easy to see and displays your current exposure settings. From an optical point of view, that's where things get slightly more interesting and the bit that I was most interested in. When looking through the optical viewfinder, you have your frame lines just like you would when looking through a Leica. Now, one of the features of this camera is its close focusing distance. This is just 10 centimeters. If you shoot Leicas, that's something like 70 centimeters. So there's quite a big difference. And a lot of these cameras suffer from something called parallax, where you're looking through a viewfinder and your lens is next to it. And what you're seeing through the viewfinder isn't exactly what the lens sees, especially when objects are close. So how on earth does Fuji get around this 10 centimeter problem? Now, one of the really cool features of this optical viewfinder is the frame lines actually move about. So when you focus on something really close, it actually moves the frame lines to frame your image exactly. Now, this is something that I actually love. Now, I wish Leicas would do this and that they had that better, closer focusing distance, because this feature is so well integrated, you barely really realize it's there until you focus on something really close up, and then you notice the frame lines move and you think to yourself, great, that's got me covered, and you take the picture. Also, when looking through the optical viewfinder, there's a little screen on the bottom right hand corner, and this shows you a little digital image of your focusing point, and you can use this to check that the autofocus has nailed focus properly, and also use it for manual focus and focus peaking to help you nail that manual focus. To me, this hybrid viewfinder is a huge win, and I can see why there's so many people out there that absolutely love this system. Next up, let's have a quick talk about the lens. So like I said earlier, this is a 23mm f2, and that's a 35mm equivalent. The lens on the front is almost a pancake design and it's really small. That makes the camera overall quite a small package. I do think the small size makes the aperture and the focus ring a little bit fiddly and not all that ergonomic, but this is definitely something I could look past. The focus is focused by wire, so that means that the focus is all handled digitally, and on the front of the lens, the focus ring just keeps on turning. There's no hard stops. Personally, coming from a manual focusing lens, I find this really hard to use. I imagine after a bit of time and a bit of practice, especially with that little display down in the bottom corner of the optical viewfinder, that you'd probably get pretty good at focusing. I personally just find it hard coming from manual focus lenses, so for the majority of the 2 days I owned it, I shot this camera using autofocus. From an autofocus point of view, the camera's pretty snappy. It definitely doesn't feel as quick as like the Sony A7 that we're shooting on now, but it's definitely quick enough for everyday use. In use, the lens on the front of this camera is crispy as anything. I absolutely love the lens on it. It's really sharp in the center, even wide open, and performance across the frame is really good. and I didn't suffer that much in terms of flaring either. Now, I found myself shooting this lens wide open most of the time, and that's really easy even in bright sunshine because this camera comes fitted with an internal 4-stop ND filter that you can turn on and off, and the 4 stops is plenty quick enough to be able to enable you to shoot at f2 in bright sunny conditions, and therefore I found myself using f2 an awful lot of the time. I did find when shooting near that sort of 10cm close focusing distance that the images were a little bit soft. Again, not that bad, and having viewed images from previous versions of this camera, it's an awful lot better than they used to be. This is, however, a fixed lens camera, so a lot of this is personal preference, but to me, I find the 35mm maybe just a little bit too zoomed in. I think I would prefer a 28mm equivalent and then rely on the 26 megapixels to offer some sort of more interesting crop options, as I found, especially when we were out shooting Donington Castle, that I had to step quite far back to just be able to get the castle in frame, and a 28mm I find is a bit more versatile. So like I said earlier, this camera features a leaf shutter, which is a pretty interesting feature that you don't find on many cameras. Now, since leaf shutters have been about, one of the best things about them is their flash sync speed. So you can set crazy flash sync speeds, but I don't think many of the users of this camera are going to worry about that. I personally cannot remember the last time I took a flash out with me on a trip. The other advantage of a leaf shutter though is how quiet it is. They are so quiet. Now, I think this is a feature that loads and loads of people will love, especially street photographers, where you want to be able to take photos in often quiet conditions and be pretty quiet about doing so. Now, there was also a scenario over the 2 days that I owned the camera where having that leaf shutter enabled me to get a shot that I don't think I would have got with any other camera. And here is that shot now. Now, remembering that the lens on the front of this camera is a 35mm, I was about 2 foot away from this robin. Now, I shot this on continuous burst. Now, on all of my other cameras, that'd have been so loud, it would definitely have spooked the robin, but the nice quiet Fuji meant I was shooting in continuous burst and it didn't scare the robin away, enabling me to get the shot. I'm not gonna claim that this is a wildlife lens, but I guess it goes to prove the point of just how quiet this is. 2 foot away from a robin, didn't scare it away, even though I was shooting on continuous. So what are my closing thoughts on this camera? I think it's a cracking little camera. The lens is crazy sharp, it can be shot wide open in pretty much any conditions you want. It's got some really cool features like that hybrid viewfinder, and the leaf shutter adds a little bit of extra quirk to a camera that I really enjoyed using over the 2 days that I had it. I guess the main question is, having owned it for 2 days, would I buy it? Now for me, no, I'm not gonna buy the camera, and that's partly because it overlaps with my Leica collection quite a lot, and I don't think I need another camera that kind of overlaps them, and also that 23mm 35mm equivalent lens. To me, that's just slightly too zoomed in. If it was a 28mm, I think I'd be very tempted into buying it. It has, however, opened my eyes to Fuji, and is another camera that I think might be the perfect match for what I'm looking for, and I'm hoping to hire that shortly and feature it on the channel. If you can guess what that camera might be, let me know in the comments, and if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're on our way to 1,000 now. I was hoping to get there by the end of Feb, and we're getting pretty close. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.